Hey y'all, welcome back to Courtney's Diary, and today I want to talk about something that is so fun and that's really just a lot more relevant to Courtney's diary when you think about me actually like telling personal things from my diary. So today is Friday, February 14th, and that is Valentine's Day. So of course, happy Valentine's Day to everybody who's gonna watch this video, whether you're watching it this weekend or the weekend or days after that. Happy Valentine's Day. So today's topic is very, very relevant to Valentine's Day because I want to talk about self-love. So self-love is hugely relevant, and sometimes I think that self-love, the term itself, can be very misused, misunderstood, and just overall just like thrown out there. But I read a book all about love by Bell Hooks that really put self-love into perspective for me personally. But the book is not contrary to what you might think, all about romantic love. In the book, she explores love in all types of capacity, from like loving children, loving yourself, of course, love of your community, love of the world, love of like a higher purpose for yourself. So she wrote this book basically because she set out on a quest to define what love is. So I am using the chapter in this book about self-love as a reference for today's video. Creating a life you love requires some conscious review of who you are and who you believe yourself to be. So whatever vision it is that you're aiming for, in order to make it sustainable and work, I think that you have to basically examine who you are. You have to be that person that's going to live out that vision before that vision materializes in your life. So in the book, Bell Hooks states that the quickest way to, having a healthy love for yourself and self-love is to have a high self-esteem. So you have to overcome having a low self-esteem in order to have a healthy amount of love for yourself and practice that each day. So by the end of this video, I would like for you to write down and observe the 6 points that I'm going to talk about and get a gauge on if you have, like a low, moderate, or high amount of healthy self-esteem. So let's first start out by defining what self-esteem is. Self-esteem is knowing and believing that you have value and you're worthy of happiness. And self-esteem also can be coupled with self-worth, because it's really how you think and feel and what you believe about yourself to be true. Self-esteem would include the positive things you believe about yourself to be true and the negative things that you believe about yourself to be true. So in my opinion, self-esteem is how you feel about yourself. So that can also deal with how resilient you are in the face of basic life challenges. And basic life challenges meaning like, we go through tough things in life sometimes, like breakups and maybe the loss of a loved one, just overall life transitions and not feeling like you fit in your old life anymore. So self-esteem has the ability to affect whether you can bounce back and move through those types of life transitions. And I think that healthy self-esteem would come in handy because you'll be able to consciously take a look at your life and wake up and like start saying to yourself like, I deserve more than this, or I love myself a little more than to be in these types of situations. Also, when you start to build a healthy self-esteem, you can come across a term that is generally used in psychology called cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is basically when you start to consciously act out something, or consciously go through something that deep down, unconsciously, you don't believe is true. So the 6 pillars of self-esteem that I will be mentioning are going to hopefully help you unloose the cognitive dissonance and get everybody, and by everybody I mean like everything inside you, on board. Get your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions on board to move you forward through your life consciously and having a healthy self-esteem. So personally, I had to do a lot of work on my self-esteem when it came to me going to therapy. Therapy helped me realize that I didn't have the healthiest self-esteem, like I thought I had. Generally, I don't know, when you grow up, you feel like, of course I like myself. Of course, I love myself and all of this. but self-esteem really can really tie to how your world shows outside of you. I was not truly confident in myself to, grow up and discover my talents, or just think about the things that I used to love to do and apply that to my career. And I was just overall I had low self-esteem, and that manifested in my jobs as low paying, monotonous jobs that were boring and that I just really hated, that didn't reflect my creativity and who I really was inside. And low self-esteem manifested in my relationships as me being insecure and just too attached and just overall delusional, honestly. A question that my therapist used to ask me was, if you really truly liked yourself, how different would your life be? So therapy was a huge boost of confidence and self-esteem for me, because the methods that my therapist used were just generally geared around me becoming a more self-assured, confident woman and having that manifest in my life as a better job, a conscious relationship, telling people how I feel. So I credit going to therapy and just also journaling and just other modes of self-care to having a higher self-esteem, and to me setting out on my own personal journey and boosting my self-esteem each day myself. So of course I had to do some deep digging and decide that, okay, hey, I like myself, meaning I want my self-esteem to reflect in my life. I want my job, my career, my relationships, what I engage in, my activities. I want everything to reflect that I love myself, that I like myself. So to me, self-love is the action of your life aligning with how you feel about yourself. So now I'm going to go over the 6 pillars of self-esteem, and that self-esteem is going to fuel our self-love and have our life really reflect who we are and what we love about ourselves. So these 6 pillars, they do appear in All About Love, but Bell Hooks quoted the author Nathaniel Branden in his book called The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. So let's get into it. The first pillar of self-esteem is living consciously. So living consciously basically means that you are coming off of autopilot, and maybe you are waking up to what's running your life. And that could be maybe some habits that you have that just really aren't getting you where you want to go, some internalized emotions, and that could be an emotion of low self-esteem or low self-worth, or maybe you feel like you aren't truly lovable, or maybe you are scared of getting close to people emotionally. It can be a number of things. So when you start to live consciously, you start to kind of dig a little deeper, whether it's through a therapeutic mode of journaling, or maybe going to therapy, or just life coaching, or just Googling, applying things to you, asking your parents, asking your friends how they view you. You start to live way more consciously and wake up off of autopilot. So number 1 is living consciously. Pillar number 2 is self-acceptance. And self-acceptance happens when you stop judging yourself and criticizing yourself and internalizing that and just believing it and making that who you are. And self-acceptance also comes when you stop believing what other people have to say about you. Because generally you will say something about yourself and your mind will literally find evidence that that is true, and then you're going to reinforce that fake belief, and then you're just going to, have your self-esteem plummet even more. So self-acceptance happens when you stop just judging and criticizing yourself, but also it's good to stop judging and criticizing others, just to stop that whole feedback loop period in your mind. And the number 1 thing in the book, and I also practice this too, for self-acceptance is affirmations. So I will have a separate video about this, and I'm so excited to talk about the power of affirmations and kind of the science behind them and how they can actually work for us. But of course, we use affirmations to accept ourselves and to align with that which we want to be. So self-acceptance is going to set you up for a positive and confident belief in yourself, because if people do say shit about you, then you don't accept it. You've already accepted in yourself that you're not what people are going to say about you, or you're not how people treat you. So that's going to set you up for success anyway, in my opinion, if you've already accepted the good about yourself. Okay, and pillar number 3 is self-responsibility. So self-responsibility happens when you take full responsibility for the attainment of your goals and your overall well-being and just your overall life. Self-responsibility shows up as you actually having an action plan to move yourself into a better quality of life and being confident that you can do that. So self-responsibility happened for me when I really started to be confident that I can create my own unique personal life. So like I said before, I had just a very skewed view of life. I thought it was black and white. I thought that I had to literally do what everybody else was doing in order to be happy and fulfilled. So of course I had a lot of cognitive dissonance when I started to realize that I hate my job, I hate doing the things that everybody says I should do. So I started to take responsibility for researching and, freelancing and going into business for myself. And maybe I can do this in the future and I can set these goals and take the actions now in the present that's going to allow me to have this creative free life that I really want. So self-responsibility is really a road to personal power. You can actually feel more confident in yourself and your ability to move and create how you want, your life how you want, instead of being burdened by a circumstance. Because our circumstances generally are so temporary, but we probably get into the mind frame of oh, I'll never get out of debt, or I'll never have a higher salary, or something like that. But if you take some responsibility and be conscious in creating goals and taking action towards those goals, then that is going to lead to a life of high self-esteem because you took responsibility. So pillar number 4 is self-assertiveness. And self-assertiveness is when you are free to say what you feel and stand up for yourself and be who you really are. So that's basically having a personal opinion, and as long as it's productive and not putting anyone down, you feel free to state your opinion. You assert yourself, and you assert yourself in how you feel and what you believe to be true. So the opposite of being self-assertive is probably maybe feeling shame for how you feel or feeling shame for what you believe. And this honestly showed up for me because, sometimes as children, if you have an opinion or if you feel a certain way, you don't want to do something and you express it, you get shamed for feeling that way. So self-assertiveness and really practicing that can lead to having a healthier self-esteem because you have no fear of, people disagreeing with you or people going against your opinion, or maybe even you have no fear of just confrontation. So the example that Bell Hooks used in the book, I really like. She used an example of, you see high-powered, successful people and celebrities who sometimes undermine their success and they kind of go down a path of self-destruction. She said that generally people who are high-powered and, we praise them for being successful and all of these things, sometimes they may not be self-assertive. Sometimes they may have a fear of being shamed, and that will lead them to, not get close to people or not let people know who they really are. This just puts all of the things that celebrities go through. I don't know, for some reason, I just tied it to that. It puts all of the things that celebrities go through in perspective, because just because you are successful or have an amount of fame or fortune, it doesn't mean that you also have a high self-esteem. So asserting yourself and just saying how you feel, regardless of what you fear people may think or fear people if they may shame you or not, that is being self-assertive. Pillar number 5 is to live purposefully. So living purposefully, once again, relates to creating a plan of action on how to reach and attain your goals. But living on purpose is paying attention to the outcomes that you're getting when you have reached said goals or, on the way to said goals. Living purposely really, to me, means aligning your behavior with the outcome that you want. And I had a huge problem with doing this, and I still have a problem with living purposefully because Of course, I am on purpose in everything I do. Like, I know that I want to reach certain goals for my career and, get married and like move and travel and do things like this. But I would catch myself not behaving in ways that would give me that outcome. So, living purposefully is closely tied to our career and the work we do, because sometimes we can make choices that do not align with our outcome that we want. And let's say you're offered a job and the salary is pretty high and it's pretty stable and you're going to get taken care of, but is that going to allow you more time to travel? Is it flexible for you to work on your passion project? Is it going to be a culture of progressive people that you can hang out with and bounce ideas off of outside of work? So living purposefully is all about really aligning what you do with the outcome that you plan to, materialize. And the sixth and final step to cultivating a healthier self-esteem is personal integrity. So personal integrity deals with being accountable for the decisions that you make. And the easiest way to be accountable for the decisions that you make is to make decisions that are based on your values, and also decisions that are based on where you want to end up in life. So I found myself, of course, in therapy, it's like every time I used to go to therapy, you feel beat up on and you feel judged. But once you come down from that and start to apply it in life, you feel like, dang, this is really helping for me. So I found myself making decisions where I would regret it and it would cause like resentment and I would just be miserable. But I was making decisions that were not in alignment with my personal value system. So for example, if you value creativity and flexibility, then you probably shouldn't decide to take a job that would stifle those things. And in a relationship, if you value just like having your own set of friends or self-discovery or just doing things independently, sometimes without your partner, then you probably should get on the same page as your partner and make sure both of y'all value the same things. So having some personal integrity will cause you to maybe write a list of things down that you value. So of course you don't have to refer to the list each time, but it's more like a compass and a deciding factor when things in life come up. You don't have to make a decision based off of like denying yourself what you really want, and then you'll look up and you'll find you have a higher self-esteem because you have made a series of decisions that have led you to an outcome that you really wanted. So we've covered all 6 pillars of self-esteem. So to recap, the first pillar of self-esteem is to live consciously. Number 2 is self-acceptance. Number 3 is self-responsibility. Number 4 is self-assertiveness. Number 5 is living purposefully. And number 6 is personal integrity. So when you have a healthy self-love practice, the author says that it is basically the foundation of all love, because when you think about self-love, a lot of people will say that like, oh, self-love is synonymous with self-centeredness or being selfish, but it's not that at all, because I think of self-love as like everything in your life reflecting how much you love yourself. And then also self-love, when you fill yourself up with things that you love to do, places you love to go, people you love to be around, and people who you are in intimate relationships with that love you, then I think that you're coming from a place of fulfillment instead of lack. So you are not like rushed to go out and find that job or score that opportunity or find the right person, because you are already filled up with self-love. So I would love for y'all to write down these 6 pillars and just get a gauge on how you feel about yourself. How would you rate your self-esteem, whether it's low or moderate, or maybe you don't need any work on your self-esteem. Then leave a comment, and of course, like this video. So if you like this type of content, then Courtney's Diary is generally information that I have wrote about in my journal, I have learned about, and I'm practicing in my life. But I also talk about how to be like a creative entrepreneur, and I'm just basically documenting my journey to live more intentionally and live the life of my dreams. So I drop videos on Fridays. And once again, happy Valentine's Day. I hope y'all stay safe and see y'all next video.